Libra goddess Virginia Novello is here.
Hi. Oh my God. Thank you for having me.
We go way back.
Way back, 13 years back.
And we met on another continent.
In another continent, in Barcelona.
In Barcelona, España. Haciendo reversa.
Haciendo reversas de reversa, mami. I still have that video that you took.
Oh my God, me too.
Yeah, it pops into my Facebook every once in a while. It was so fun. It was so fun. We were just partying like one does in their 20s in Spain. And we met in a house party. And then it was like towards the end of my trip.
What a random night.
It was a random night.
That led to a specific friendship.
Yeah, because we weren't supposed to be there. We were bar hopping, and then we met somebody, and then we ended up in that apartment. Yeah. And you were like, I live in LA. And I was like, shut up. I live in LA. I hadn't met anybody in Spain in that moment that was living in LA. So it was like definitely a bonding experience. And then I was in Mexico for a couple of months, and then we reconnected when I came back to LA, yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. Prepare for takeoff.
You're now listening to Stepner Show.
I think we had to go all the way to Spain to meet.
Yes.
But turns out we're neighbors.
Yes.
We live in Los Feliz.
Were we neighbors from the start? You were living somewhere else,
I was living in Beverly Hills.
You were Beverly, yes. And then I didn't have a house.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
Wait, so we both moved to Los Feliz after that?
Yes. My roommate lost my apartment when I was in Spain. And so I came back and I didn't have a place.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I was homeless myself too.
Yeah. Well, there you go. And then I stayed with my best friend for a month. And then I found this place in Los Feliz.
Yes.
Yeah.
Los Feliz. We're neighbors, Los Felicians.
For a long time. How long have you been living here?
Probably since I met you, 12 years.
Like 12 years, same.
Yeah. And I'm very excited for you to be here. I definitely want to get into everything that you're doing. I know that one of the first things we bonded with in Spain was that we were both in the circus. Trabajando en el mundo de los espectáculos.
Espectáculo.
Virginia Novello, actriz, escritora. ¿Qué más haces? What else do you do?
Productora. I do so many things, so many slashes. But yes, in the entertainment industry, I do acting, producing, writing. And then I'm also a tantric teacher, and I have a podcast called Orgasmica.
All right, we're going to get into all that. But right now, let's talk about your movie. Tell me what's going on. I know it sounds like something that you've been working on for a minute. So when I saw it, I haven't seen the movie yet, but when I saw that you're traveling the world with your movie, I was like, oh, this is what you were talking about.
All those years.
All these years.
Yeah, we bonded over creativity because I think you and I, and then I introduced you to Marta, who we did a project together, which was like so fun. We did Tucci and Tucci, and you helped us out with that one. And I think what we have in common, all of us, is that we are artists that don't want to wait for the opportunities to come. We just go at them. And I think that's one of the things that I really liked about you and your energy. You're like, let's do the thing. And I was like, yes, let's do the thing. And you're like, come to my apartment. Let's shoot it. And like, you would grab a camera and we would shoot stuff. And Marta and I are kind of like the same type of vibe. And we were doing Tucci and Tucci, which was a pilot that we were doing. And then you were like, do it. Like, yes, like we shot at a bathroom somewhere and we like dressed in the 80s. And just creativity is so much fun. And so just a bonding experience with whoever you're creative with.
Oh my goodness. I love being on your set because you guys were so playful, but yet so profesh. And you had this vision and you guys work really well together. So.
Yes, we do. And so Marta and I met Marta actually a little bit before you. And what bonded us was creativity. Same, you know, it's like, let's start writing. And we started writing Tucci and Tucci. And then Valeria came in the picture, which Denise, who I met in high school. She was an actress and she became a badass producer. But she introduced me to Valeria. And she, at the time, was just an actress. And she was saying how she really wanted to write. And by then I had written 2 shorts. And I was like, okay, let's write something. And we started writing a scene for a Reels, type of a situation. And just like, what do you want to say? And because she was like, I want to play this character, but I was like, no, let's go deeper. Like, what do you want to say? And we ended up in the theme of forgiveness. Like, how do you forgive something that to the outside world seems unforgivable? That was the kind of the theme. And about sisters, about two sisters. And Marta had gotten pregnant by then, and she was 8 months pregnant, and she was like, she was having an identity creative crisis because she was like, can I still be a creative and having a kid? You know, can I still be a mom and do this? Like a lot of women do have that, because we've been programmed that we can't, because we have to be a certain type of, to be an actress, you know, and especially in this town. And so she had directed something before, and I was like, oh, you know what? Do you want to direct this? Like, get out of your, you know, pregnancy brain for a second. And she was 8 months pregnant, and she was like, yes, I'm dying to be creative. Thank you.
Make a creative baby.
Yeah, make a creative baby, exactly, at the same time. And so I brought her in. She came in like she always does, with amazing ideas for the script as well, like some notes that she did, and we did a couple of rehearsals. And then we decided, because anything that Marta does, she was like, it starts with like, yeah, we can just shoot at the camera. And then it's like, we need money, because we need more things, and we need, you know. And so we did crowdfunding, and we raised $6,000. And it was like a small, I mean, it started as a scene, but now it's a short. It needed to have a beginning, middle, and end. So then we created that, and it was one location. And then we shot for 2 days. And when we were doing crowdfunding, there was this producer who contacted us, and he was like, I love this idea. I'm going to give you guys $2,000. And we were like, oh, wow, okay. Like, that's amazing. And it was Valeria's contact, actually. That man is Gonzalo Ruiz de Velasco. And then he saw the short, and he's like, this needs to be a feature. So it was his idea. And we presented a short. We took it to a couple of festivals, just local stuff. And he was like, start writing the feature. And that journey began 9 years ago.
Oh, my goodness. And this is the feature that is out now, or it's coming out. And it's been in the festival circuit, Sisters.
Yes.
Oh, my goodness.
That's how it started, with a short.
Nice. And what is the feature about?
The feature is, so when Marta, when they said this is a feature, instead of making about two sisters, we decided to have a third sister, because Marta's like, I don't want to direct a feature yet. So she wanted to be also an actor in it. So we decided to make it about three sisters instead of two. And we did the first treatment. It had always been about, we wanted to show Mexico in a different light. That's what was one of our things.
What does that mean exactly? What is Mexico in a different light?
That in the media, we're always portrayed as something really dangerous, horrific, like
in sepia,
drugs, in sepia. Exactly. What the fuck are we in sepia all the fucking time? Like, are we in the desert forever and ever until the end of time? Yeah, it's like, you know, cartels and all of the stuff that sells. And obviously things that do happen, right? It is part of it. But it's like portraying any other country in just one way,
right.
You know? It's like, then
one
it becomes, it then becomes just a one perspective, and it does affect how people see our country. And it does affect how people see us and how they see Latinos. And we are seeing the also repercussions of how Latinos are talked to in the media when the elections and everything happen, right? It's like rapists and this and that and drug dealers and criminals. And we're more than that. And so we wanted to showcase the magic of Mexico, the beautiful giving, because people are so giving, even if they don't have anything. If they are living in a casucha in the middle of like a town and like they're eating tortillas with, you know, rice for a month, they will tell you to come by, and they will give you a seat on their table and feed you the tortillas with rice.
Right. I firmly believe that the magic in Mexico lives in its empathy of the people.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, and we wanted to show that, you know. So we always knew that was a main subject. Mexico was going to be a fourth sister character. And so we knew we wanted to do a walking, and so we decided to do a pilgrimage. Ooh. So what the movie is about, it's about three Mexican-American sisters. Their grandmother would tell them this story when they were kids, of this magical story of a pilgrimage she did. And she would tell them like all these magical places and pueblos mágicos, right? It was like, and the mountains and this, and she would tell them as like a kid story. And she would say, if you ever need a miracle, you know what to do. and she had a locket, and she gave that to the older sister to carry the tradition. And then you fast forward to the sisters now, and the sisters don't talk to each other. They were in very different countries, spaces, lives. My character's in Mexico. The other one is in Texas. The other one is in LA. Like, we all are separate. Lucia is a lawyer. Maria is a teacher and married. And I am Sofia, and a mess. Like, just a disaster living in Mexico, just fucking anything that she wants and drinking a lot. And no, I cannot hold a job. And so Maria gets some horrific news about her health. And that triggers this thought of like, oh my God, wait, the miracle. And she talks to her sisters, and they are in, like, Sofia and Lucia are in a fight with one another, and they don't want to talk. Oof. And so she basically lies about what they're going to be doing in Mexico. It's like, oh, we're going to have a vacation. And she doesn't tell the other that they're going.
Oh, wow.
And they meet at the Guadalajara airport. And she's like, well, surprise, we're going to do the pilgrimage. And they're like, what the hell? Like, what do you mean? She's like, I have all your backpacks. And like, she just did the whole thing. And she's like, we're doing Abuela's pilgrimage.
Oh my goodness, this is amazing.
And so then they go, and they decide to finally go. And in the means of the walk, they meet amazing people. They go into Atemascal. We want to show, you know, like also our traditions, and Atemascal and curanderas. And they meet a beautiful character called Ken, played by Cristo Fernandez.
Yes.
Who is in Ted Lasso and many other shows. And
I'm sure many people want to know how you got him in your movie.
that was wild. This movie is wild. This movie had 4 directors.
Wow.
I mean, it took 9 years, right? So it's been a long journey of like, okay, maybe it's going to happen. Maybe not. Maybe it will happen. Maybe not. A studio wanted it, but they didn't want us anything to do with it. They didn't want us to be the actresses or having writing credit.
You know, that's the first thing. That was my first reaction when I first saw that your movie was out in festivals, playing in Europe, playing all over. I smiled so much inside because I knew that you'd been working on this project, but I had this moment where I was so excited because I know how important it is for you and your team to be in the cast and for you to be in your own movie. I think that was incredible. So I applaud you. I'm so happy. I'm proud of you. And I commend you for sticking to your guns.
We did. They were like, okay, we'll buy this movie. And we're like, no. Like this, no. Like, they were like, well, Gina Rodriguez can be. I'm like, no, this is not. We wrote it for ourselves. Like, we wrote it for us. And now that people are seeing it, people are like, oh, you guys have so much chemistry. And I'm like, I know that's what, like, we worked with each other for 9 years. Like we knew what we were doing too, putting ourselves in character that are our strong suit. And that we knew we can deliver a really good role. Like, that I'm not playing something that I'm like so far away from me.
Right.
I'm playing pretty much my essence, and that's what I wanted to do too. And so I have the belief that the movie has its own spirit. We're gonna get a little woo woo here.
Yeah.
Take at your ensomeros and take at your marijuana too. Let's go there. I believe that when you create a project, the project becomes and births and has its own energy and becomes its own identity, like entity. It's an entity. And there's a time where you want to make certain decisions for the project, and then the project is like, no, it's not the right one. And it's going to guide you through the right one. But in the process, if you try to be a control freak to your project, you will suffocate it. You have to understand when you have to step in and when you have to let the project choose and pick and do. And that happened with Cristo. We met Cristo at Festival de Guadalajara 4 months before we started shooting. They invited us to just work the red carpet because we were going to shoot in Jalisco, and they were like, yes, come over, talk about your movie, like whatever. And we saw him, and then the director, by the way, we had already cast that role to another actor. And the director we were like, Cristo's there. We knew he was in Ted Lasso, and we were like, oh, he might not be interested. Like, because we're not gonna pay him how they pay him in the UK in an Apple TV show, you
Right.
know. And so she just went in and she's like, we have a movie we're shooting in 3 weeks. We really want you to like, it's shooting in Jalisco, these are ballet. And it turns out that he used to play soccer with my brother. Like Guadalajara is like so small. And like Guadalarancho, exactly. It's like so small. He used to play soccer with my brother, and then his sister is best friends with my cousin. And
Oh
like,
my
of
goodness.
course, all the
3 degrees of separation.
yes. But he read it, and we were like, I was with the director. I was like, oh my God, what do you mean you're offering the role to somebody like that? We already had it, right? And so we made him audition so we can pitch it to the producers and be like, can you please, like, and the producers was like, listen, you already offered the role to somebody else. I do have to say a shout out to the producers who let us have all creative control, and they never got involved into it at all, not even with casting. But this was one of the moments that they're like, you made the choice. You offer the role to somebody. Now you cannot backpedal, because then it's our face and our reputation.
Right.
And we were like heartbroken. We love that other actor too, but then we knew Cristo also brings so a different type of color to it, and also an international thing.
Right. It increases the visibility.
Yeah. And we were like, I'm sorry. Also, there's this other role. If you wanted to do this other role, like you can. And he's like, no, I'm just interested in this other. And I was like, okay, great. And he was so nice, because he was like, but if you guys, it's okay if I don't get it, but if you guys need anything, if you need equipment, if you need anything, please let me know. I am here to help. Like, this is a great story. He loved
Oh my God.
the script so much. He was like, let me help you. So a week before we started shooting, the other actor couldn't sign the contract because he had a contract with HBO and was conflicting.
Ooh.
And then the producer was like, we just can't, because if HBO decides to extend the shoot or whatever, we're fucked, you know, and we're an independent film. Like, if you don't show for 3 days, it's over, you know, with locations and money and all things. And we called Cristo immediately. He was like, okay, like, I understand. And we called Cristo immediately, and we were like, can you still take the role? And he had already, I think, bought his ticket back to London. And he decided to do it.
Oh my goodness, that's amazing.
And he entered also as an executive producer.
That's great.
Yeah, which is amazing, because he took that role also very seriously.
That's amazing. So
he
he's
had
in the
introduced
movie.
us-
He partnered into the movie as well.
He partnered into the movie, and he took that role of as an executive producer very seriously as well. He's always introducing us to people and creating spaces for us to walk into. Yeah.
And at what point did you realize that this was going to accelerate and become something much bigger than when you originally conceptualized it as a scene for a reel?
I think it was step by step, because I wouldn't have been able to stick it out for 9 years. Because, of course, any project that we take under, you're like, next year, you know, you put yourself these goals, right? It's like, next year I'm going to shoot this. Next year I'm going to do this. And then it doesn't happen. And then there's like a heartbreak that happens with it, right? That
Yes.
it's like not moving. And you're like, and then you question yourself. You question yourself, like, am I good at this? Like, am I not? Is it not moving because, like, I suck at this thing? Or is it the industry? Is it like, what the, you know? And so you start having a creative identity crisis.
Right. I can imagine.
I mean, and I think all creatives can relate to that. Like, it's part of being a creative. You're like, but I'm like giving you my heart and you don't like it. But what we did have, it was little reassurance along the way. Like, even the studio that wanted it, we sent it to coverage, and we got beautiful coverage from them.
Wow.
And I was like, well, that's great. Okay, that is like, okay, we're going into the right path. Okay. And then another production company was like, another producer, she was like calling us crying. She had this amount on her desk when we met her of scripts that were sent to her. She's like, send me yours. And I was like, she's going to read it in a fucking year, because like the amount of scripts.
Right.
And then she called us that night, and she was like crying. And she's like, this is one of the best scripts that I've read. Like, it just resonated so much with me. And so those things of people that have been in the industry for a long time, that read mounts and mounts and mounts of scripts and getting that feedback, we're like, okay, so we are on the right path. We just have to keep going. We're not getting the feedback of this is horrible, or like, what, you guys don't know how to write. We're getting the feedback of this is good, so keep going. And so we just kept going and kept writing on it. And the thing about writing for 8 years and a script, I think we wrote for 6. Yes, we wrote for 6, is that you grow with your script. And that means that then your script can get deeper.
I can imagine that you grow in your real life and
then
it
you put
influences
it in. Yeah,
the
and you
work.
put it in. And that's the thing, one of the beautiful things that it took so long is that it started more as a broad comedy, and then it became a very deep, hard comedy, but like a comedy with a lot of heart and a lot of depth to it, because we were going through a lot of shit in our lives.
Oof, I can
And
imagine.
when we got together to write, we were put it in there. It's like, okay, so you're going to that with your husband. With my husband, I was going through some stuff, and Marta with her sisters, and like I was with my sister, and like Valeria as well. And so we were all like having conversations before we wrote it, and it's like, let's write that. Or we would have a conversation in back on the taxi, and Marta was literally typing what we were saying, and it's exactly what we said in the movie.
Wait, she was transcribing
the
real
conversation.
real conversation, and then put it into the movie. That's amazing.
And then we put it into the movie,
She
and
is
it's so funny
always
because
working.
people are like, "Oh, that's not how women talk." It was a scene about talking about sex, and like, that's not how women talk about sex. We're like, that's an actual transcription of a conversation that we actually had. Yeah, it's always like, oh my god, that line, that was amazing. Or we're going to something that is like, yes, like definitely let's explore this theme. And so it became deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And what people have said is like, oh, you can tell the depth of the script. And I was like, yeah, when you let yourself grow with the script, right, you're not sticking to the idea or like paralyzed, but like, no, this script is a broad comedy, period. It cannot be moved, right? It is like, no, it can be moved because I'm growing as a person. Because for 6 years, a lot of shit happened in 6 years. Right? And so it's like, it doesn't make any sense that I get stuck in the past with this idea. I have to bring the idea and the lessons and the life experience with me into the script.
So you're human. You have a lot of human experiences, personal challenges, and then you're facing the odds of what the industry is doing or not doing, right? You have pandemic, you have strikes, right? You have amber lights, green lights, red lights. So in essence, you greenlit your own project. And then now you're taking it to the marketplace.
Yes. So how that happened, we did have a lot of yeses that fell apart. I just also have to say that there were also a lot of heartbreaks.
So the stories are true of rejection.
Yes. It was like amazing. Yes. The light, like, okay, you guys are on the right path, right? Or like, you're on the right path, but like, we don't want you to be the actresses. Okay, well, that's not the door, right? So we'll keep looking for other doors. And like, okay, like always like trying to look for, are we in the right path? And we kept getting affirmations for that. But then we would be like, yes, it's happening. There was this production company that was like, we'll make it. And then we got so excited, and it was like, yes. And it was actually during the pandemic. And then it fell through. Oof. And it was so heartbreaking. And I was like, I don't know. It was at one point that was the one point that I was like, I don't know if I can keep going, you guys. Like, it's been 6 years. I don't know if I can take more of like, yes, buts, or like, yes, it's going to happen, but it falls apart. I was like, I think I have another year in me. Like, it's hard.
And how did you keep moving? What did you do?
Well, the good thing is that we're 3, right? And like, so the good thing about being 3 is that, okay, like maybe I'm not in the mood to write, and maybe I'm heartbroken today, but I will show up and have my presence there, and maybe they take the bulge of the work that day. And then maybe another one has some, we did write a lot around Marta's schedule because she had 2 kids. So we would write after 10 p.m. and, until 1 a.m. and like, that type of things. And like, well, being 3, it allows you to distribute the work and even the emotional work. Yeah. And then the 3 of us can also be the emotional for each other. When one is like, listen, I am about to give up. The other 2 are like, we're so close though. Come on, we can do it again, right? Come on, just a little bit more. And then they lift you up. That's the great thing about having a team, that when one is down, the others can.
And this is just one movie.
This is just one freaking movie for so freaking long. It's like so long. And working on the scenes for, again, like 9 years, like, you know, and then when the pandemic, and they were like, okay, we can make your movie, we had to change the script to fit what would be shooting with the pandemic meant, right? So a lot of the scenes that were like a lot of people in it, we had to figure out how to cut that or figure out how to shoot around that.
Oh my goodness.
And then I think it was 6 months after that reduction, we got Gonzalo calling us. Because, by the way, he had been through that journey for us for 6 years. He stuck it around. He, the one who had the idea of this feature. We created a company together with him, and he was also like pitching us and doing, and he was so convinced that he's like, no, you guys, of course, are the actors. Like, no, don't give it to anybody else. Like, that's amazing that a producer and a man gave us our like space that way. And he called us and he was like, we got an investor. I think it's happening. And I was like, okay, sure. And I said, I'm not going to get excited until I'm on set.
Yes,
like, I just cannot take it anymore. I'm not going to get that excited anymore. And we did a lot of like conversations. We went to Guadalajara because the investor was in Guadalajara. We had meetings with him, and he was like, I love the script for this and that. And he got so excited, and he da-da-da. And then we started, and then the director that was attached fell through.
Oh, wow.
A month before we started shooting. So then I was like, I knew, here I go. Like, that's why I didn't have to get excited. Like I know shit happens, and like, you know. And so we had to find another actor, and they're like, if you don't find another actor in the next three days, we can't proceed with this movie.
Damn.
And so we were in the count. They needed it to be a Mexican woman. That's where the two things. And you might think, and that's why I think it needs to be more, because there's not a lot of them. And I wish there were more.
Mexican women directors?
Uh-huh.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And I think probably we talked to all of them, to be honest. We talked to like so many. And we needed them to match our vision, you know, and to understand. And for them to understand what they were coming into. They're coming into as a director for hire on a vision that is not theirs. Correct. And they're here to deliver this vision. Right. So there are a lot of directors that want to have their own vision and their own input, and this is not what this is. And so, because it's 6 years of development of this without a director. Right. And so then we found her to Mar Novo, and she's from Guadalajara, and she had done a couple of shorts, and her short had won Toronto. And she's amazing, and she visually is exceptional.
Ooh,
and
how exciting.
She had not done, though, a feature. And she decided to jump into it. And she had 4 weeks.
That's amazing. Yeah, congratulations.
And so we got the equivalent of 1.2 million.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you. And then here we went. And then I was on set. And then the first day on set, I was getting excited. I was like, okay, it's happening. It's happening. It's surreal. We're here.
That's amazing. Yeah. So you shoot the movie. The movie's done. Yeah. It's in the festival circuit. You're traveling the world. Mm-hmm. How can I watch it? When is it coming out?
Well, it's going to be in theaters March 7th.
That is amazing. Yes. Springtime.
So you get to see it in the movie theaters.
That is awesome, man. Like, congratulations.
And yeah, we need all the support because, listen, there's not a lot of movies that go into theaters anymore, specifically Latino movies, you know, even though Latino people are the most moviegoers of everybody.
We buy the most movie tickets.
We do. We still believe in movie theaters, I guess. And we still will go and take our whole family there. But what's interesting is that then we don't go watch our own stories. So we need to do that, right? We need to like support ourselves and support each other. The movie is 90% in English and then 10% in Spanish. It's bilingual. It has Spanglish in it. And it has, I think people are going to really relate to it because also one of the things that we really wanted to really put in the movie is how our relationship with language is so different, even if you grew up in the same family.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
So one sister moved to Mexico, so she speaks it's like perfect Spanish, and she rather speaks Spanish than English. The other sister doesn't speak Spanish at all because she feels like she can't unless she's perfect speaking it, but she understands it very well. And then the other sister speaks it very, very atropellado,
Very
right? Like she
Spanglish.
tries. She's like, I'm Mexican, goddammit. Like, and so she like will speak it even if it's all wrong and grammatically
Martha's
incorrect.
character?
Yes, because that's Martha. Yeah, because that is
How
who
did I
she
know
is.
that? How did I know that?
Because that is who she is, and that is. We just also wanted to show that, like, even if you grew up in the same family, you have a different relationship to language, and you have a different relationship to your country, to your, to your roots. And so that doesn't mean that we all have the same just because we grew up in the same family.
Oh my goodness.
And so we wanted to show the differences of like, oh, the one that feels really Mexican, the one that doesn't feel Latina enough because she doesn't speak Spanish, and the one that does like feels more American and like kind of rejects her Mexicanness. And so I think there's so much to relate. It's really funny and heartbreaking, but really funny. Like you will get a big laugh.
That is awesome. I can't wait to see it. Congratulations to you, Marta, Valeria, the whole team.
Thank you.
I will be there in the cinemas.
Yes, please.
When your
come.
movie comes out, we'll bring out the tropa. And I'm very excited. And now it explains why I haven't seen you in a long time.
I know, right? Like, oh man, so many things. I was, focused forever in this.
But I've seen a lot of other stuff that you're doing. Let's talk about your podcast.
Okay, let's talk about the podcast. My podcast is called Orgasmica.
Orgasmica.
It's a podcast that came out of the necessity to talk about sexuality without taboos, because I am also a certified, like also during the time that we did not see each other, I got certified as a tantric guide, as a breathwork tantric teacher, let's say. I call myself a guide, more like a teacher.
And for someone who doesn't know, what does that exactly mean?
That is sacred sexuality, and the reason why I got into it is because there was a time in my life where my whole body shut down. Like I had no libido, I had like nothing, and it was also so attached to creativity because sexuality is so attached to creativity, and my life felt purposeless. Like when my sexuality left my body, or when I disconnected from my sexuality, it's just, I got into a kind of a depressive state, honestly. And even my creativity took a dump. Like, it's just like, it was just a mess. And doctors were like, nothing's wrong. And
So
like,
medically, nothing was wrong with you.
Yeah, I mean, they say that.
Right.
But also accounting that there's not a lot of research in women's health. And I have so many women that come to me now and with so many problems. And the doctor's like, oh, I took this test. You have nothing wrong. Your hormones, da. And no, they ended up having like a myoma or like a huge thing in the uterus, but they don't want to check that because that costs money. And so they just take blood tests and your hormones seem to be okay, but like they don't do an MRI and they don't know all these things that they need to do. But yeah, medically I was fine. I had a mess with my hormones because of cortisol, because I was so stressed, and then cortisol levels raised up, and then my liver was a disaster, so that also affects your hormones, and it was just all these things. So I had
So
to
your body shutting down. And how did you pivot to turn it around?
I started looking out to alternative things, and it was like, okay, how can I connect with my body? How can I connect with my senses? I was so uncomfortable in my body because I had gained weight, and I was just like not feeling inside of my body, and my marriage was a disaster as well because, I didn't want to be affectionate with him. I didn't want to have sex. I just, and he's like, what's wrong? And I couldn't give him a freaking answer because like I did not know. I was like, I don't fucking know, and so everything was shaky in my life. Everything was really hard in that moment. And I was like, no, I need to start, right? And so regulating my nervous system was a first. And then I started knowing about Tantra, which is sexuality is sex. A lot of people know Tantra as the Kama Sutra, but they just know it as that. But what it really is, and what I love about Tantra, is that sex is not just about sex. Sexuality is not just about sex. It's how you live your life.
Right.
It's how you are in your body, in your senses, how you eat, how you experience, how you dress, how you feel your clothes, how you take a shower, how you have conversations with people. Is like the turn on of life.
Right. I once heard that there is a misconception of sensuality as a physical sexual act, but it's actually having all your five senses in sync.
Exactly, because it's called sensuality, which is the senses. It's like being in your senses and getting down in your body, because the majority of us are in our head all the time and we don't come down into our bodies. And then we want to figure out what the problem is from our head, you know, but we don't want to come down. And so is this experience of like, no, there's more. And then I got this intuitive ping to take this tantric profesorado, and I did it for 2.5 years. And I did it for me. I was never gonna be like, oh, I'm teaching this. No, I did it for myself to experiment on myself, to be the experiment on myself, and it changed my life. And I was like, oh my God, yes, like now I'm living and getting back into the like spark of like my creativity was on fire because I was able to create from that space again. I was able to be in my body again. I was able to be in my senses again. I was able to reprogram all of this stuff. And that comes with what have they taught us about sexuality too, and sex, right? Like for women, it's bad. Don't touch yourself. Like, you know, like you're a puta, you're this, all the like Latino religious information that we get, all the stigmas are seeped into our body. Whether we in our head are like, this is bullshit, your body doesn't know that.
Right.
And you have it in your body. And so it's also dismantling that, and how do you dismantle thousands of years of like sexual repression as a woman, you know? And so it started becoming that for me. And so when I finished, I did a thesis on it. It was a practical thesis. And then a friend of mine was like, I love what you're saying, because I was telling my friends what I was learning.
So your body shuts down.
Yeah.
You take a journey to bounce back, and you have this knowledge acquisition, and then you start sharing your knowledge.
Yeah.
And then what
my
happens?
friends is like, you need to teach this. It's like, no. I was so against it because I was like, I'm never going to be, I had the stigma that in this industry, because I've had sexual shaming in the entertainment industry, I was like, there's no way that I can teach sexuality and still be an actor. They're going to eat me alive because I've had those experiences and the stigmas.
Yeah.
And because I had a couple of Me Too experiences in this industry, I was like so scared to combine them, because I was like, I'm going to be eaten alive. I'm going to get like molested again, or, you know, shamed or talked to in a certain way because, oh, you do this. Oh, do you want to have a threesome? You know, like that kind of conversations from directors in this industry that did not have a fucking boundary.
Right. So there was fear that people would retaliate and cancel you or try to exploit you.
Exactly. And so I was like, no, I was fighting it to her. I was like, no, I can't do that. I created another Instagram. It's called Sacred Alquimia, because I wanted to be two different. And at first, like if you go to my old posts, there's my face is nowhere to be found. It was just posts about sexuality. I was like, one of those accounts that nobody knows who runs them. Like I was like,
faceless account.
Yes, I was like, nobody's gonna know who I am, but I'm gonna teach this way. And then it was my sisters-in-law who were like, please do a circle with us. Please teach us. And I was like, okay. And then it just started spreading the word. And people were like, and women were like, this helped me so much. Thank you for doing this. And thank you for speaking up about it. And wow, like these meditations, because they're activations with breath and movement. Mm-hmm. And they were like, it's life-changing for me. And I was like, okay. And then I got invited to a podcast and to speak about it. And then that took off. Like it just completely took off.
Wow.
And then all of a sudden I have like people wanting for me to do consultas and all of that. And then, but when you talk about sexuality on Instagram, you get shadow banned a lot. Ooh. So I have been shadow banned for many, many, many times, or warned, you know, cannot say sexuality, orgasms, like all these things. And that's why I decided to do the podcast. I was like, I need a space where I can just say the words without going around them, because that is part of getting the stigma out, by actually saying vulva, orgasm, you know, like pleasure, like all these words that I'm not allowed to say on social media.
So you're fighting the stigmas that were generationally imposed on you and continue to be perpetuated by technology.
Correct. So I was like, okay, podcast is a way where I can just say whatever the fuck I want, you know, and then if you want to listen to it, then come out it. And so at first it was just Spanish. It was just Spanish episodes.
Sí, por eso me di cuenta que de repente estabas hablando, that comment here first, I was like, ¿qué estás hablando de sexo pero en español?
En español, exacto, sí.
Wow.
It was just needed. I was like, it's even more. I was like, there are podcasts out there that speak in English about sexuality, but very few that speak it in this way. Because yes, there's funny podcasts that is like, I see el vibrador and like all these things. But there's very few podcasts that talk about sexuality on a deeper level. And the deeper level is that it is a connection. That I don't care if you have one night stands, but if you open your heart, because Tantra has 3 points. It's like sex, heart, love, and consciousness. And when you connect those 3, then that is a sacred experience.
Right.
But if you just go have sex with just your intimate parts and that's it, and you disconnect yourself from your heart and your consciousness, then you're just leaving your energy, exiting your energy in a very unconscious way. And that's why a lot of people feel very empty after.
Right. Or vice versa, where if you love with your mind and your heart,
Exactly.
but not your sexuality.
But not your sexuality. And
then
there
it's
has to
an
be
incomplete
that
experience. Yeah.
Exactly. And so then all of a sudden I was like, okay, this is part of my mission. And the day that I released the podcast, I was so scared again, because every time I cross a threshold, I'm like, oh my God, people are going to come after me and all the things. And my throat closed off. I got a throat infection the day that I released it.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I was like, oh shit. And, my parents are still very Catholic, very conservative, and hear his daughter talking about orgasms and vulvas and all of the things. So that was also like...
on a global scale.
On a global scale. That's also my dad. When I told him the name of the podcast, he's like, ay, no, Virginia, no, por favor, ¿por qué así? ¿Por qué no se puede llamar el placer de la vida? Like he was giving me, like, every day he was sending me, like, other options for me to call the podcast. And I was like, no, that's exactly why I need to call it Orgasmica.
Wow.
Because it is a problem, because people are ashamed of it, because people don't, and we don't all just talk about sex. I invite a bunch of people to talk about different things. I had sound healers and plant medicine people and chamanas and doctors. And I have people that have written books about pleasure, people that want to fight the system, that want to talk about Palestine. Because the last question that I always ask is, what is an orgasmic life to you? And that is very personal, and everything can be orgasmic. Mm-hmm. And it's not just about sex. And that is one of my messages too.
One of the reasons I'm really enamored by you is because everything that I'm hearing about your movie, about your podcast, is that you're on a mission to make the world a better place. And how did you come to that point in your life that you were going to speak truth to power, going to create something that's against the tide? Like, where do you get that X factor from?
X factor. I like this. What a question. Oh my God. Oof. Oh my God. I honestly don't know exactly where it comes from. I just know it comes from, in my mind, creativity, like sexuality. It is a communion with the universe, something bigger than me. I know that this probably has happened to you when you write something and then you wrote it and you're like, I don't think I wrote this. Has that happened to you?
It happens to me in poetry. When I write and perform poetry,
Yeah.
I would say that's sort of what the closest that I've been getting to an orgasmic experience in life.
Yes.
Right? There's something cathartic. Like for me, an orgasm is like laughter and crying. There's a release.
A release. Yeah, there's a release. And sometimes because people want the release to be like, but maybe sometimes the release is just like an exhale or like a homecoming to your body or a homecoming to an emotion, right? That you haven't felt. And so for me, when I am in communion with the universe, I will call it God, the universe, the divinity, however we want to call it, I feel like I'm just listening and putting it out there. But of course, it also comes from my life experiences, right? I had a really beautiful childhood. I have a very beautiful childhood. My family is amazing. I'm very lucky that way. And we all have, obviously, our shit as we grow. But then I came to LA when I was 19, right? And it opened my experience of the world of like, oh, wow, racism, right? Or other religions and other cultures and things that I still fight with my family about, because they are in Guadalajara and they will forever be there.
Right.
And that is also beautiful, and that's their own experience. But my experience is more of a large community and life experience. And that also took me to be in touch with people that have mental health, people that have addictions. My husband, I met him when he was 11 years sober. And that's also, I have him in the podcast because his story, he's my recurring character in my podcast because his story is beautiful. But like 2 years into a relationship, he relapsed. And I thought I knew what addiction was until I had to experience it like this. Firsthand. And mental health and what addiction really is and the stigmas that I had with addiction and with people that had addiction and people that, like had mental health and what I thought about it, and so it has been like a journey. And the same with sexuality, right, is because it happened to me and it happened in my body and I like, it was horrific living like that. And me and Adam were broke for a while. He then all of a sudden worked as a repo man.
Your husband worked as a repo man?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, for almost 2 years because we were broke. It was just like one of those hard times. And so I feel like my job as a creative is having the pulse of what's going on, right, in life. And then also getting to know myself constantly, deeply, of like, okay, what are my shadows? What I'm not seeing? Like, okay, like this thing is presenting itself, this lesson in my life, like why? And then seeing if it's a lesson that I can share so somebody can relate and not feel alone. Because I think that's what art does. Yeah, we can keep our lessons to ourselves in private and nobody would know that Adam relapsed, it's like, and I can keep it private or I can say it. And somebody would say, oh, this also happened to me. I'm not alone and I'm not crazy. Because for a while I felt what I was going through and how I was reacting to life. I thought I was crazy. I thought nobody would understand. There's nobody that I'm seeing in a podcast talking about it or a person talking about it on social media or like, and so I think I talk about it and I share it so people feel less alone and then I can create art with it so then it can transform.
One of the reasons I started this show was to crystallize conversations that could capture the idea of how we can use creativity to create a well-examined life. And so I'll ask you after this helicopter
break. We can start singing or something. Helicopter break.
For me, creativity has always been my lifeblood, right? I recently heard that the opposite of depression is expression, right? And I also recently heard that artists usually work alone but need a community to share their work to. And so I'll ask you, creativity, how do you use creativity to balance a well-examined life?
Well, I will say that I always admire you. I'm going to turn it around for a second because I think you are one of the most creative people that I've ever met.
Oh, thank you so much.
Because you are also using your creativity in all forms and all ways. And that is very amazing because a lot of people just stay with one medium and then they focus on that medium, which also was part of how it was scary for me to do multiple things because I always had that of like, no, you have to focus on one thing to be successful at the thing. And I was like, no, that's not true. And I see you doing poetry and painting and camera and writing and doing all the things. And it's very inspiring.
Thank you so much.
You do embody artist in all its forms. So I just have to say that because it is inspiring.
Thank you so much. And thank you again for your friendship and being my neighbor and being part of my creative endeavors at Happy House.
Oh my God. It was so fun. It's been so fun. So what was the question? What is creativity?
How do you balance creativity to have a well-examined life?
I think they're one with each other. I think it's the same thing. Yeah. I think that I use creativity as a medium to always question not only myself, but the humanity in everybody. I think one of the biggest things that I have gotten as an actor that helped me as a writer and that helped me as a producer and then it helped me in my life is the fact as an actor, they train you to not judge any character, because if you judge them, you can't access them, right? So if I'm playing, even if I'm playing a serial killer, like if I just completely judge and be like, he's a monster, he's a like, I cannot access his humanity because I already pushed away
You already put a prejudice on it.
Yeah. And so I try to approach life in that way. When somebody's telling me that something about their life or how they're choosing something, instead of just going like judging them and being like, oh, of course, like this motherfucker, like da, you know, I can go, why? Like, why did you make that choice? Why did you say that? Why is like, you know, and that to me, it's curiosity is one of the most life-giving things. It's just life-giving. Like, it also makes you childlike because you're always curious. Kids are always curious about things and asking questions. And I think adults that stop being curious, they lose something.
Yes, I totally agree with that.
Yeah, there's a loss of something. I can't pinpoint of what, but there is a loss. There is a big loss. And then I see the adults that keep being curious. And then I'm just like, yes, let's ask the questions. Let's, you know, and that in turn, then you are curious about yourself.
Right.
And then you don't judge yourself for making that choice instead of being like, why did I say that? Instead of like, oh my God, Virginia, you're so fucking stupid that you said that in the podcast on Gustavo. You know, it's like, I wonder what I said that. Like, why did I, okay, like maybe I was anxious or maybe, maybe I got triggered or maybe he reminded me of this and then I got triggered about that. Interesting. And that allows me to open up a space where I get to know myself and others in a more beautiful way than just judging because I feel like I know better or I lived better or whatever it is that people do. So I think curiosity is the key to creativity.
Oh my God. Very eloquently said. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And I am very curious. You have your movie, you have your podcast, you have your personal life, family. What's next for you?
Well, I just came back from Nepal.
Yes. Oh my God. I saw all those photos.
Yes, it was amazing. I got invited to teach Tantra in a retreat. I know. It was mind-blowing. But part of it was walking for 5 days to the Annapurna base camp. And stairs, basically, up all the way. For walking for 6 to 8 hours.
Oh my goodness.
I know. And so I was terrified. I was so freaking scared because, I mean, I hike here, but it's not like I hike for 8 hours a day.
Right.
And neither do I go on stairs like that because these are intense upstairs. I mean, cobblestone stairs. They're not like made little tiny stairs. But I got invited like 3 months before, and I was like, I think a yes. I think it's a yes, and I'm gonna yes, and like be able to teach in that land, and with that culture, and like just amazing things that happen, and you know, like just submerging yourself in another culture, because you in the mountains in the Himalayas, you just like you sleep in the houses of the Nepalese, and they feed you and they cook for you, and then the trekkers and the Sherpas that were there, having conversations with them. And I went to a Hindu temple and I saw people getting cremated in front of me.
Oh my!
That was one of the most intense experiences that I've ever had. It was wild. It was wild to see how people do death in another place.
Like in an actual furnace or like in a funeral pyre? Like
no, it's not a funeral. It's a temple in the middle of the city.
Oh wow!
And the river, there's a sacred river that runs in the middle. And so on one side of the river, we're the people that are not family, and then the other side, you see the body of the person leaning like towards the river, and then people that love this person come down from the stairs and they give them the water, sacred water, and pour them into them. But I'm telling you, the way they do grief, it's so somatic. I was like, I understand so much also about Tantra, because Tantra came from Hindu, and from India, but from like more the Hindu than the Buddhist. And it was like they scream, they're men screaming and shaking and passing out and throwing up and wild experience. And you're there and you're like, am I supposed to be here? Like I said, it feels such an intimate thing. But local people go there kind of to hold space, to pray, but also it's kind of like a spectacle. Damn. And then while they were doing this here, they were burning the other person over there. They wrap it in a petate, and then they just fire. And you're just inhaling this person. And then seeing people grieving, shaking, moving, being held. This man was being held by 10 other men because he was like, no, and passing out. And he was being held down the stairs to say goodbye to his loved one. And women were wailing. I mean, it was unbelievable to watch. Wow, death in the middle of life. And then there were this Hindu girls doing a TikTok dance on my left side. And then burning a body on my right side. It was insanity.
Oh my goodness.
It was just wow. And the sacredness of the Himalayas. And I'm sure all the lessons that I have learned will come through because I've learned a lot. And one of them that I want to tattoo on myself, they say, bistari, which means slowly, slowly.
Wow.
And so I was I'm going to go into the mountains. He's bistari, Virginia. Here, the more slow that you go, the more medicine that you get, the more consciousness that you have, the more openness you have.
That is.
And so I just kept reminding myself to go, because I do so many things, and I want to do so many things. I can accelerate myself. And it was a beautiful lesson of slow it down.
Yeah.
You can still do it, but slow it the fuck down.
You do have a lot of energy.
I do have a lot of energy, and I want to eat the world. I was just what is next? What is next? Give it to me.
I think when you're in a room, definitely you don't keep up with people. People have to keep up with you.
Yes, I was just let's go. So bistari. But one of the next things that I want to do is I have a couple of retreats planned for next year.
Oh.
That include also trekking. And then I think it's a women's retreat that I'm doing in the middle, in the summer, and then probably Bhutan for October next year. So that is something that I'm really excited about, to combine walking with Tantra, with experiencing a culture, with all of that together. And we're writing our next movie, the three of us together, because people are what's next with you guys? So
yes.
We're writing a next movie. It looks like it's going to be a comedy spy.
Nice.
That maybe we shoot in India too. So that's what's to come.
Well, Virginia Novello, you are one of the most inspiring people that I know.
Oh my God, Rose. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for coming here today before the holidays and making space in your schedule.
Oh my God, of course.
And it's so wonderful to see you. And hopefully one day we can work together again.
Oh my God, yes, please.
And
let's do something together.
Yes.
That's so fun. Yes. Please.
I have ideas.
Oh, well, amazing. That's something that you have never been lack of, ideas. You always have ideas. I remember you're I have this idea. And I was just yes to all of it. I mean, yes. And then you jump from one to the next, so easily. That probably more easy than I have ever experienced anybody do. So I am down to see whatever you want to create.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I've been a bit of a personal renaissance these last 15 years. So
amazing. Yeah.
Thank you for being part of my journey.
Of course.
I look forward to everything that you do.
Thank you.
And congratulations on everything.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you. Everybody come to see Sisters. Should I say where can they figure it out?
Yeah. See where give us the name of the movie, where people can find it, your social media.
The movie is called Las Tres Sisters. You can find us on social media, on TikTok. Yes, we're on TikTok doing dances and shit because I guess that's what's required now. TikTok, Instagram. We have our website, lastresSisters.com. No, lastresSistersmovie.com. And then my personal Instagram is Virginia Novello. And then if you want to know anything about Tantra, now there's episodes in English as well in the podcast. It's 1 week in Spanish and then the next week in English. So every Tuesday there's an episode. Tomorrow is an English episode. And so that you can follow me as sacred_alquimia. And or you can listen to the podcast in all the platforms. Orgásmica.
Love it. Y una pregunta, ¿a ti te gusta trabajar más en español o en inglés? ¿O en tu vida manejas más en inglés o español?
Los dos.
Fully bilingüe.
Fully bilingüe. invento palabras. Like that's one of my things. And that's
What?
why I say in the podcast, I always go, I invent words. So just forgive me. Because my sister-in-law, she produces a podcast in Guadalajara. I go over there to record it. And I'll be just like really into something and I would say words and then I just see her go. And I'm like, oh, that's not a word. And she's like, it's not a word. And I was like, did you understand what I'm saying? And she's like, yes. I was like, perfect. That's the whole point of language, to understand each other. You get what I'm saying? So I mix words, Spanglish, English, like my mind works in that way. The movie is that way, you know? It's in Spanglish. I mean, my brand, Sacred Alchemia, it's in Spanglish. Like Sacred is in English. It's Alchemia is in Spanish. And so I just feel like that is just also part of who I am at this point.
Amazing. Virginia Novello, everybody.
Thank